Hi there, my name's Ryan, or Dr. Ryan Kobrick. I'm from Embry-Riddle Aeronautical University in Daytona Beach, Florida, and originally from Toronto, Canada. And I just wanted to say hello to the robotic pickle juice. That is an awesome name. I hear that you guys are the engineers of tomorrow. I wanted to send you a message to congratulate you on your rookie season or your rookie year at the first Lego League. I heard that you guys learned a lot, won some matches, and were very creative, and that's really cool. We need creative engineers, scientists, artists, not just the normal STEM fields, but everyone to be involved. And for the space industry, it does take a little bit of everything to make the magic work. It's very interdisciplinary, meaning that we need people involved with all different subjects. So whatever you're studying or interested in could lead you to working in the space industry one day. So I just had a couple notes for you guys here, and I wanted to just take a look at your questions. I know it's a little bit late for the Q&A part of this, but I'm happy to follow up with you guys in the future or answer other questions that might come up. So I understand you were at the Fletcher Meadows qualifying tournament. Very cool. So I'm from Toronto originally, what is now called Midtown near Bathurst and Eglinton. Grew up in the regions called Forest Hill. So if any of you are familiar with that part of Toronto, that's where I grew up, and then went to Queen's University for my undergraduate in Kingston, Ontario, and then international, and been in the US for, I guess, since 2003. So how did we connect? You're probably wondering. Well, a friend of mine, Nathan, and I used to race competitively, sailing. So not just growing up in Toronto, but I actually raced from Toronto, from the Island Yacht Club, and slowly went, I guess you could say, first to the provincial level, then national level, then international. And I ended up racing actually in 7 world championships, and it was really exciting. And during that time, I was also starting to coach. And my friend Nathan, who's the friend of our mutual connection here of how we all connected, and I were on the Ontario sailing team together. So we were best friends. We actually drove down to Florida after finishing high school and spent a month traveling Florida and racing, living in our van in a couple hotels, and it was really cool. It was a lot of fun. It was a great experience. So I raced also in university for undergraduate, and that was a lot of fun. So now, besides, you can see I'm taking care of my newborn here, and that's why it took me a long time to record this message. I play hockey roughly once a week, yoga as often as I can, which is, something like once a week. And I still sail when I can, but it's difficult to do. So I have a very sporty, I guess, spacey, sporty background, which fits really well with what you guys were working on for space sports. So I want to take a look at your guys' questions, because I think that there's a few things that come to mind when I read those. So let's just take a look at those real quick. So I thought it was really cool that you guys were thinking about how to entertain people in space. I think it's really important to consider that we're not just going to space so we can figure out how to tinker with a few things and bring back some samples or learn about those things. We're going to space so that we can actually expand into the cosmos and make civilization grow overall. And everything we do in space, everything we learn to do, ends up becoming beneficial for people back home. So we learn how to make better water filtration systems, and then that helps people who don't have access to clean water maybe have a technology given to them that they can help survive and thrive. So let's take a look at, so we've got SARMs, soccer with arms, pretty cool concept. There was one sport that a friend of mine actually tried to start out of Toronto. His name's Rocky, and he wanted to do like a zero gravity football, where people would go in a parabolic flight, which is where the plane goes up and then dives back down, and you get about 30 seconds of weightlessness in this airplane. And you would play during the different, I guess you could say, phases of the different gravity loads. So going from weightlessness to 2Gs where you can barely move, and then to where the plane's pulling up, which is closer to 1G. And you'd play kind of like what you guys were talking about. So that's kind of cool. His idea was like 15 years ago and didn't really go anywhere, but it brought a lot of attention to sports and space, which is fun. So I'd be all up for that. I actually applied to be part of that league. I have a video audition that's on my YouTube channel that I can send you guys a link to later on if you're interested in it. I tried to like say, hey, I'm sporty and spacey and I want to be part of this league. And I think it would have been really cool. The Rocket League, it's kind of funny how you mention in real life based off of the Rocket League game, because the game is actually based off of what they were trying to do in real life. So I worked for the X Prize Foundation, who had the $10 million spaceship competition that was won in 2004 by Spaceship One and Burt Rutan's team. And during that time, they were trying to figure out how do we keep people interested in spacecraft and competitions. And I had worked on something called the X Prize Cup. That was actually one of my master's theses about a competition to bring all these rockets together to compete, if you will, all during 1 week, where they would see how many passengers they could launch in 1 week to the edge of space. And so the Rocket Racing League was kind of a spin-off of that, saying, well, we need to have this where we have multiple vehicles, people can see it, and from grandstands or on the ground pretty easily. And there's actually something called the Reno Air Races, which is similar to this, except for those are they're not rocket powered airplanes. So these Rocket League vehicles actually flew around, and they designed this game so that people could kind of either race against the real ones or follow along, where they would have to go through these checkpoints or circles, if you will, in space. And actually the pilots, when they were designing this game, would see that imaginary ring up in the air, so it would be on their heads-up display, so they would know whether or not they're actually going through that hoop. So it's a pretty cool concept. So I know you guys had other questions. We can kind of look at a few of those, but then I'd rather you guys just follow up with specifically what you want, or we can arrange a time to chat on Skype, which might be easier, because then that might lead to other questions that you guys are interested in. My space background is, I didn't really mention that, but I focus on spacesuits and life support, human performance, so that all relates kind of to this sporting world, if you will. But I'm also interested in lunar dust and how it's very abrasive. After eons of micrometeorites bombarding the surface of the moon, there's no atmosphere up there. So these micrometeorites hit and pulverize everything, creating these little particles that are super sharp. They're almost like broken glass. And because there's no wind or weather, there's no atmosphere on the moon, these particles just sit there. They don't roll like they do on Earth, which would smooth them out. They stay sharp as glass. So the entire moon is covered in these teeny, not microscopic, well, I guess they are microscopic, like 10 microns, that's micrometers, small particles that are super sharp like glass. So that's another area that I look at for human operations. So there's lots of questions you have, like, can a ball be inflated in space? So it can be inflated, but unless it's strong enough to handle the pressure, eventually it might overstretch the material. So a spacesuit, if you think about it, flying around in a vacuum of space is like a giant ball, or it's like the Michelin Man when you're in there. It's inflated, and it would keep expanding if the material didn't hold it together. So you could inflate it, or because it's weightless, it could just be a hollow object. It doesn't necessarily need air. So astronauts moving around in spacesuits. Okay, our time's almost up, so let me figure out some questions. Okay, so I think we can continue the conversation based off what you're interested in. But again, congratulations on your rookie season, and I hope that you'll continue to be involved in competitions. Yeah, lots of competitions. They're a lot of fun, and you learn a lot working with teams. And I think that's it for now. So spacesuit up, and see you in space. Bye.